Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video on RevAtlas. I'm Sandeep and you're watching the camera review of the Mi 10. Now before we get started, please do make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now let's get this rolling. There's a quad camera setup at the back, of which the star attraction is definitely the primary camera, which is a 108 megapixel Samsung HMX sensor with 1x1.33 in sensor size, optical image stabilization and f1.7 lens. You also get a 13 megapixel f2.4 ultra wide angle camera as well as a 2 megapixel macro camera and 2 megapixel depth sensor, both with f2.4 apertures as well. Focus is quick on the Mi 10 and it also captures images with accurate white balance. Even with the AI mode turned off, the images are a bit more saturated than normal. The dynamic range is excellent and most of the time you don't even need to use the HDR mode, and keeping it off, which it does by default, often gives you more natural looking images as well. But when you do need extra dynamic range, turning on HDR will help extract that additional bit of information from the shadows, resulting in shots with lesser contrast, meanwhile adding a bit more saturation in the process as well. You can also make use of night mode in daylight situations too, which increases the dynamic range even further, also adding clarity in the mix. If you're into having images that are dynamic and vivid, then turning on AI mode will definitely help, as you can see from the results here. Images are shot in 25 megapixel by default, and although combining 4 pixels into 1 and calculating 108 divided by 4 should give you 27 megapixels, you actually get 25 megapixel resolution files in the end. The reason for this is that it also crops in ever so slightly after pixel binning, which you can see after you compare the two images side by side. Shooting at 108 megapixel gives higher level of noise with slightly better sharpness in some situations, but mostly the same level of sharpness in others. Coming to portraits, having such a large sensor as well as a large f1.7 aperture means you get a very shallow depth of field without even using the portrait mode, and in fact in most situations you're better off without using portrait mode unless you really need to do so. More often than not, getting close to the subject or object or having some difference in distance between your point of focus or background is good enough for the sensor to shine through. However, one downside of this is the sharpness and quick focus fall off, which to be honest I don't mind for what we get in return. In fact, depth of field is so good at times that they both practically look identical with or without portrait mode, but it does kick into play in certain scenarios, or if you look closely, you can see the minute differences, which mainly involve smoothing of the bokeh and lesser dynamic range, but more importantly, in certain intricate situations, the blurring goes wrong in terms of edge detection. The other great thing is that it even works at a distance also, and in good lighting conditions it works pretty quick, and while it's not quite as fast as the Pixel, it can still capture children, pets and other moving subjects pretty well. You also have the portrait cinematic option, which letterboxes your 16:9 images to create very impressive pseudo 21:9 images, and if used well, these can definitely be very impressive as well. In terms of low light performance, the Mi 10 is an absolute beast. I'm yet to compare it side by side with the Pixel devices, but I have a feeling that it could be as good, if not better than them, thanks to the large sensor and aperture. You can also use night mode and get even better results with very low noise, excellent sharpness and detail, as well as no shakes thanks to OIS. The ultra wide angle camera allows for a more dramatic field of view and composition. However, there's a difference between the primary and ultra wide angle camera in terms of the image processing. It's more neutral compared to the richer colors on the primary camera and has a cooler color tone. Sharpness and detail are good at the center, but towards the edges it gets a bit softer. Low light imaging is not very good on the ultra wide angle camera, especially owing to the fact that it doesn't have night mode and the sensor is small coupled with a smaller aperture as well. Macro camera is decent, but again I would have appreciated a telephoto camera instead, or a more capable 5 megapixel macro camera like on the Note 9 Pro series, but this is what we get, and here are some samples from it. There's no telephoto camera on the Mi 10, which some might be looking for in a flagship, but then again I guess they needed that to be one of the differentiating factors on the Mi 10 Pro. Luckily, the primary sensor itself is very capable and sharp that you can crop in 2x either during shooting using the 2x toggle or in post-production and still have very usable results. It isn't a replacement for a telephoto camera surely, and I wish that Xiaomi provided one, but it's still much better than other devices that produce weird results after cropping. The front-facing camera is a 20 megapixel f2 unit that's housed within a display cutout at the upper left corner of the screen. The images from the front camera are decent but not great, as they do exhibit over sharpening as well as noise. Dynamic range is overall pretty good, but there's a tendency to post a darker exposed frame than most other devices. Still, this is an easy fix in post. The sharpness and detail are decent but not too great, and this is evident when you pixel peep. The portrait mode is great in terms of the blur applied as well as the edge detection, and only rarely gets slight issues near the ear tips, but again not too bad. The sharpness and detail seems better than regular mode in fact, so it seems like the main reason for reduction in sharpness is happening due to frame stacking during HDR, as the portrait mode doesn't have HDR and as a result highlights have a tendency to be overexposed. Videos can be recorded up to 4K 30fps mode with EIS, but the 8K and 60fps modes in 4K and 1080p don't get EIS for some reason. I can understand 8K without EIS and maybe 4K 60 but I definitely would have expected 1080p 60fps to come with EIS. It's also worth noting that the 8K video is actually being captured at 6K and then interpolated to 8K resolution. Still, there's plenty of detail and excellent sharpness in this mode, as you can see even from our video that we put out earlier, which we shall link at the end of this video. The only downside is, like I said, lack of EIS and also slightly more focus hunting, but overall worth the trade-off, especially if you have a gimbal or tripod. 8K video bitrate is over 100 megabits per second, and 4K video is also good in terms of detail and stabilization with roughly half the bitrate. The front-facing camera can shoot up to 1080p 30fps videos, but there is no 4K mode, nor is there EIS, which to be honest isn't very good on the flagship device. The sharpness is great and there's good detail as well, but the overall dynamic range itself is also not very good. Hey guys, it's Sandeep from RevAtlas and this is the front-facing camera on the Mi 10 capturing 1080p 30fps video. Let me know what you guys think about the overall sharpness, dynamic range, how well it's picking up my voice in this scenario, and the overall stabilization as well. The Pro mode is quite extensive, and like we saw on the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max, you get similar features here too, including Pro mode for both photos and videos. And in photos you can choose a minimum shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second and max shutter speed of 30 seconds. Similarly, it has a base ISO of 64 but can go all the way up until ISO 6400. 108 megapixel capture is supported as well as raw photo capture, and videos are also supported up to 4K as well, and support for log and cinematic video modes, but keep in mind that log isn't supported in 8K and maxes out at 4K 30fps. Overall, the Mi 10 comes with an excellent primary camera that does amazing photos both in good lighting conditions, low light in terms of the portraits that it captures, and is one of the best that we have seen in the Android camp. The videos are also pretty great with the exception of wanting EIS enabled in more modes, and I also think that they could use with a bit of tweaking in terms of the software processing. However, the main issue here is the letdown from the front camera both in terms of photos and videos, which need to be fine-tuned better. And apart from that, I also wish that it came with a telephoto camera, but then again this does come with an ultra wide angle camera, which I do find more useful instead of a telephoto camera. So if brands like Apple and Google are forgiven for not bundling a telephoto camera or an ultra wide angle camera respectively, then I don't see why we can't accept the Mi 10 for not having a telephoto camera, considering that it has such a great primary camera at the end. The Mi 10 is one of the best cameras currently on the market in terms of photos, and while videos need a bit of fine tuning, that too is pretty good. Thanks for watching this video. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you again in the next one.